the big event coming up this week. The Democratic National Convention kicks off tomorrow. Thousands of delegates are already gathering in Chicago, less than 80 days from Election Day. Joining me now is David Charter, Associate US Editor at The Times. Hello, David.
Hello, Carol from Chicago.
Great to have you with us. We'll talk about the Democratic Convention in a moment. But before we get to that, a short time ago, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, arrived in Israel in his latest effort to push for a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza. It is Blinken's 9th trip to the region since the war began in October, and it comes after the US presented a modified proposal aimed at bridging long-standing gaps between the two sides. David, clearly the US is really talking up the prospects of this deal and the optimism at some kind of a breakthrough.
Yes, it does feel like we've been here before, Carol, but Biden, who has really disappeared from the public scene since announcing that he's not running, has been, first of all, concentrating on his hostage release deal and now on this, also a hostage release deal, of course, but this attempt for a ceasefire in Gaza. Clearly, he would have liked to have announced this ahead of the Democratic Convention, because we're expecting very large protests from various groups in Chicago, especially tomorrow. There's a very big protest planned in the streets here, it is from activists, Democratic left-wing activists who our group want to remind delegates gathering in Chicago that there's an enormous feeling in the country among, especially on their side of the fence, that the Biden administration hasn't done enough. So they are desperate, really, to try and get this done.
And it looks very unlikely there's going to be any kind of a breakthrough anytime soon when you hear from Hamas dismissing all talks of progress as an illusion.
Well, they keep saying that Israel is imposing new conditions. We're not quite sure what they are, but I'm not sure that the Israeli side is ready yet either. So that's why Blinken's there. As I say, he's arrived in Israel. He's got a series of meetings with all the top people tomorrow. He's going to see if he can get it across the line.
Well, let's turn our attention to that Democratic National Convention. Vice President Kamala Harris will be confirmed as the party's presidential nominee on Thursday. And there's going to be a heavyweight lineup, including former Presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. One of those attending will be Laura Schwartz, former advisor to President Clinton. Earlier, she told me that Donald Trump's attacks on Kamala Harris at a rally in Pennsylvania last night show that his campaign is struggling. Well, that was Laura Schwartz speaking to me a little earlier. Clearly, I mean, this is going to be a big week for Kamala Harris, isn't it, David?
Oh, well, this is really a great chance for her to keep the momentum going, because she's in a honeymoon phase, and what your guest was talking about there is really that Trump has, unusually for Trump, been rather shut out of the news agenda. He's trying to find a way back in, and he's not really been able to do it. That, of course, is very unusual for Trump. He's very good at getting the top line on every story. So a convention like this, 4 or 5 days of adulation for Harris, and her big chance to make the primetime speech on Thursday night, is another way of her, to keep the bandwagon rolling. It's 79 days until the election. I'm personally wondering just how long this honeymoon phase is going to last and when it's going to get much more sticky for her. I suspect that will come around the time of the debates, which they do seem to have agreed to hold on September the 10th.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big test for Kamala Harris. But this coming week, we are going to see some of those big names that are already endorsing Kamala Harris. Of course, at one stage, there was going to be a question about whether, Joe Biden was going to try and force a contest, whether there'd be a battle to succeed him, and so on. It's now a foregone conclusion that Kamala Harris is confirmed as the Democratic nominee. When you look at Barack Obama, of course, a former president, he's going to be making a big speech. He was perhaps a little bit slow to endorse her. Do you think people are going to be watching his language very closely?
Well, I mean, I don't really buy into the reluctant Obama line, to be honest, because it was clear pretty quickly. In fact, when Biden, within an hour of announcing he was pulling out, Biden had endorsed Harris, and that shut down the chances of a contest, really. And I think it did take Obama 3 or 4 days to come out for her, but that meant that he got a whole news cycle to himself. It was, in a way, rather smart that people were waiting to hear from him. And of course, when he did, it was a very fulsome, supportive statement from both him and Michelle Obama, who is also likely to speak, we're told, both of them coming up on Tuesday. Um, and I yeah, people love to, especially especially here, they love to hear Barack Obama speak. And it's his home city. He came up in, as you know, in Chicago. So it's really I can tell from, we just got here yesterday and went out to a welcome event party last night, and it was a really exuberant feeling. There was a lively band playing. There was an enormous bar. There were fireworks over the lake afterwards, with the Chicago skyline and the full moon in the background, and it just felt like the Democrats were really enjoying themselves. And I can tell you that would not have been the case if Biden hadn't dropped out.
Yeah, it's clearly going to be a huge surge of support that we're going to be seeing all week. It's a great showcase for Kamala Harris. But when you talk there about when the honeymoon might end, she has got to face this debate with Donald Trump. We know that these events can be hazardous. I mean, look what happened to Joe Biden, because, of course, it was his floundering, uncertain performance at the last one that led to him eventually having to pull out of his bid for another term in the White House. And I just wonder also whether if the Republicans can get a more coherent attack line together, where the weaknesses of Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz are likely to be. We know that immigration is a big Republican theme, the economy, and so on. How do you think the race is going to shape up from here on?
Well, I think once the shine comes off Harris a bit, which it will do, the Republicans have got some very strong attack lines. People have lived through quite high inflation. It's okay. The inflation is low now, but prices are still elevated quite a lot compared to 2020, when Trump was last in office. And a lot of people you speak to who are, just regular voters, say the economy was better under Trump, and that's borne out in all the polling. Even though Kamala has her nose ahead, we've got a Washington Post poll putting her on 49 to Trump on 45. So that's the biggest lead we've seen in a poll, a national poll, I think. One thing worth bearing in mind is not only that within that is Trump quite a long way ahead on handling of the economy and handling of the border. But at this stage in 2020, Biden was further ahead. And obviously, the last election was pretty close, just decided by 5 states, really. And you've got to, as much as the Democrats are enjoying themselves and excited, the polling suggests at the moment that it's really a toss-up. You can't say for certain that Trump has has now been beaten as much as it looked like he was beating Biden before. It's going to be at the moment it's very close. And as I say, if the Republicans get their act together and Trump can actually land some blows on policy, it's going to be a tough race for Harris. They're going to be some hard days ahead for her.